Hi guys, sorry for the delay. Today we're gonna do the recording for 42 October, November 2020. So after this, I will try to post some AdMaths video. Okay, stay tuned for that for those who is taking AdMaths. And all the best to those who is going for their February-March 2021's examination. So without further ado, let's get started. So for the question that we're doing today, okay, they are looking for distance traveled for the question 1A. So you're required to write down that your speed is actually distance over time. Okay, so you got 813 as the speed, and the time given to us is actually 11 hours and 10 minutes. So aside from all this information, there's one crucial thing that you need to know is that you have to correct your answer to nearest 10 kilometers. So speed equals to distance over time. 813 equals to distance over the time that was 11 hours and 10 minutes. So some conversion is required because we need to calculate everything in hours form. So for the 11 hours, 10 minutes, you're required to write it as a proper fraction where 11, 10 over 60. So the divide by 60 over there is to convert the minutes into hours. So distance will actually be 813 times 11, 10 over 60. Then your final answer will be 9,078.5. However, since they mentioned about correcting it to nearest 10 kilometers, you're required to write it as 9,080. Moving on, we have the question asking us about Carol's journey from London to Windhoek, okay, was 15 hours and 42 minutes, and the total distance traveled was 10,260. So this time around, they gave us the total distance and the total time. So average speed, basically substituting these two information here, okay. Similar step is required where you take the 15 hours and 42 minutes. Again, you're required to divide it by 60 for the 42 minutes. So after the calculation, you should be getting your answer as 654 after correcting it to 3 significant figures. So for the part 2 calculation here, you're required to take the information that we gotten from the previous part, take the 10,260 divided by 470, then you will get your results as 21.8 after correcting it to 3 significant figures. As for the next one, I used the comparison method. I took the 21.8 over 1, okay, the over 1 there represents the dollar, okay, and then equals to 100 kilometers over unknown. So by calculating the unknown, I will get my price per kilometers. So for this, you actually get 4.59 after correcting it to the nearest cent according to the requirement by the question. Question C, Carol changed 300 into 3,891 Namibian dollars. Okay, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, sorry. 300 divided by 3,891 equals to 1 over unknown. So through this, you should be able to get your information as 12.97. As for the next part here, this is a transformation question. Okay, let's scroll down and see what do they want. They wanted us to get a single transformation that maps triangle T onto P. So for T to P, okay, it is obviously a translation. Okay, and I shift it to the right by 1 step and then going downwards by 6 steps. This will get me the vector of -1, -6. So your full answer for this will be translation with a vector of -1, -6. Part B, number 1, reflect triangle T on the line x equals to 1. So I try to draw a line here, okay, a blue line. So you're required to imagine that this blue line is a piece of mirror. So the distance between the point at 2, 1 is actually the same distance to the image. So through that, I'm able to trace my first point is located at 0, 1. Then I calculate 3 steps to the left hand side, 1 step up, and I'm able to construct this triangle over here. As for B number 2, they are looking for rotate triangle T through 90 degree anti-clockwise about the point 6, 0. So 6, 0 is actually this yellow point that I labeled here. Anti-clockwise means I'll be pushing my triangle T downwards. So with that, I roughly illustrated a 90 degree to show you what's happening. And I'm able to roughly sketch out where would the T image be located at. And it should look something like this. Okay. And for the last one, it's enlarge your triangle T, okay, with a scale factor of -2 from the center 1, 0. So the scale factor was a whole number, means that it was being enlarged. However, there's a negative over there. This negative represents it was being inverted. So you're required to draw from the points, okay, connecting to the point of enlargement. So that's how I constructed these 3 blue lines here. Okay, then I'm required to calculate from the space of 1, the height of the triangle was 1. After it was being multiplied by 2, you will get 2 as the height of the triangle now. So with that, I'm able to trace if the width is 3, then after it was being enlarged, it will become 6. So this should be where the triangle located at. This is the enlarged image of this triangle T. Okay, so when it was being inverted, it's to show you the negative symbols. Question 3a, 2000, okay, at the rate of 2% per year compound interest. So the keyword compound was involved, so you're required to use the compound interest formula. So for me, I'll be taking 2000 times 100% plus 2% to the power of 5. After correcting it to 3 significant figures, I'll be writing 2210 as my final answer. As for part number 2, calculate the overall percentage increase in the value of BEF investment at the end of the 5 years. So I took the new amount, which is 2210, minus with my original of 2000, divided by 2000, and then multiply it with 100. So with this, I'm able to trace my percentage as 10.5%. As for the next one, we have our question here that goes by, find the minimum numbers of years that will take for best investment value to increase to 2,500. So 2,000 was the original amount, it never changed. But this time around, you're required to know that the years was the unknown that they are trying to ask you to look for. So for this, I set 2,500 over 2,000. Okay, the years part is still a unknown. So I incorporate some logarithm concept where the base I took it as 102%, while the results is 5 over 4. With this, I'm able to trace the results as 11.2683811 years. However, there's no 0.268 years, okay? So you're required to round up on this because they wanted more than that. If you were to use 11 and you substitute and calculate, you wouldn't get 2,500. Only when you put 12 or more, you will get 2,500 and above. That's how you solve this, part number 3 here. Moving on, we have part B here, where the population of the villages decreased exponentially. So the keyword here is decrease exponentially. So you saw me highlighting it in yellow. Okay, so exponential also represent that we will be using compound formula. So the results of 16 years ago multiplied with 100% minus 4% to the power of 16 equals to 255. By shifting the 96% to the power of 16 to the other side, I'm able to trace my final results as 490 after correcting it to 3 significant figures. Question 4. First thing that I identified from the question itself was the total numbers of plant, which is 120. That is very important, so I will always circle it out even when I'm solving the papers myself. So let's proceed with the question. A number 1, they are looking for median. So all you need to do is to take the 120 multiply with 50%, then you get the results as 60. So some students will actually stop here and write the final results as 60. So this is not what the question wanted. They wanted you to trace from the cumulative frequency. 60 you join to the graph that was given to us. Okay, over here I draw it in blue. Then you trace it down, you get your results as 25 for your median. As for part 2, they are looking for interquartile range. Okay, so all you need to do is to find the 75% minuses with the 25%. So for 25%, when you trace it down, okay, it's actually somewhere around 90. So from 90, I draw a yellow line and I trace it down. I gotten it as 32. Okay, 120 times 25%, you will get 30. So from 30, you trace to the graph, you actually get 22. So you notice that I've written 34 at there. It's because I calculated the gaps between the boxes. 10 small box to represent 10 centimeters, which means one box is only 2. So I erase the 34 and change it back into 32 over here. So 32 minus 22, you will get your answer as 10. As for part 3, 60th percentile means you're looking for 60%. So you take 120 times 60%, you will get the results as 72. So from 72, okay, for the cumulative frequency part, each small box represents 2. Okay, so 72 will be located here. I use red line to draw it. And when I trace it down, it will arrive at 27. As for part 4, they wanted numbers of plant that is more than 40 centimeters. So I drew a green line over there. From 40, trace it back up. We actually get the results as 114. But this 114 is actually to represent how many of them that is lesser than 40 cm. So to get to the results the question wanted, I'm required to take the total of 120 minus by 114 and get the value as 6. As for part B, number 1, they're looking for mean here. To make this calculation possible, you're required to take the class interval that was given to us and trace their midpoint first. So the respective midpoint is actually 5, 15, 25, and 40. For those that's wondering how do I calculate this, is actually by taking the value in the class interval, 0 plus 10 divided by 2, followed by 10 plus 20 divided by 2, 20 plus 30 divided by 2, and 30 plus 50 divided by 2. Multiply the midpoint and frequency up, add them all together and divide by 120. So this 120 is the value that I circled at the start. So always make it as a practice, then you don't have to calculate the cumulative frequency to find the total. After correcting the answers, okay, I will leaving the results as 27.92. If you want to write it as 27.9, it is also acceptable. Part 2 here, they are looking for the height. So sometimes students get confused by this. Height basically represents the frequency density. So for frequency density, all you need to do is to take the frequency of the respective group, divide by its class intervals. But sometimes there will be scale factor involvement. In this case, okay, it's clearly here because From the group that was given to us, the frequency was only 18, the class interval was 10. So 18 divided by 10, you only get 1.8. And this 1.8 doesn't match up with the information given by us, where the height was set at 7.2. So what you need to do now is to figure out what scale factor was involved by taking 7.2 divided by 1.8. Then you will get the scale factor as 4, which means for the group that they asked us to calculate, the 30 to 50, the frequency was 38, the class interval was 50 minus 30, you will get 20. So when you're 38 divided by 20, you're required to multiply a 4 into it and get your final result as 7.6 centimeters. Moving on to question 5. Okay, so this is a algebra question. 3 small cakes means 3x. Okay, I circle it in blue. And then large cake is 2x plus 1. That I put it as yellow. So 2 bracket 2x plus 1 to represent that. When you add these two up, it will be 12.36. So by expanding the brackets, you should be getting your results as 3x plus 4x plus 2 equals to 12.36. 7x equals to 10.36, and x, when you take 10.36 divided by 7, you will get 1.48 as your final results. As for part B, the cost of 18 small chocolate cakes is the same as the cost of 7 large chocolate cakes. So 18x equals to 7 bracket 2x plus 1. Expand the brackets, shift them accordingly. You should be getting 18x minus 14x equals to 7. You get 4x equals to 7. And x results will be 7 divided by 4, where the results will be 1.75. So question C onwards, it's slightly tricky now because you're required to find the numbers of cake instead of the price of it. So all you need to do now is to take the price that you paid, divide by the cost per piece, then you will get the results of how many numbers that you actually purchase. So in our case here, I'll be taking 4 divided by x and 13 divided by 2x plus 1. So when you cross multiply it, you will get your results as 13x equals to 4 bracket 2x plus 1. Multiply, expand the brackets up. You get 5x equals to 4, where x value will actually be 0.8. Whereby for part D here, so similar concept was being used from the front. So 20 divided by x, okay, added up with 10 divided by 2x plus 1, you will get 45 total pieces of cake. So from this, I have to make their denominator the same first. So for the 20, I was being multiplied by 2x plus 1, while the 10 will be multiplied with x. So I transfer the denominator away and expand the brackets up. I'm getting 40x plus 20 plus 10x equals to 45x multiplied with 2x plus 1. So let's finish up the calculation here. Okay, I got 50x plus 20 equals to 90x squared plus 45x. Arrange them up. You will get 90x squared minus 5x minus 20. So for this, okay, it's clearly too big to be factorized. So I'll be using quadratic formula to simplify my workings here. So my A was 90, my B was negative 5, my C was negative 20. So with this, I sub into the quadratic formula. Negative B plus minus square root B squared minus 4AC over 2A. You will get your final results as x equals to 1 over 2 and negative 4 over 9. So at this moment, you should analyze instead of including both the answer. You need to mention that the negative 4 over 9 is not accepted because the price of a cake will never be negative. That's how you sort this question 5D out. Okay, this is a very interesting question. It's been a while since they come up with this type of question. The last time I saw it, I remember, was about 2014. Papers from 2016, 2015, 14 and below, they will have this type of question here. Question 6, okay, probability question. One disk is picked at random and this has the number 4. Out of all the discs here, there's actually 2 of them. That has the number 4. And there's a total of 6 discs here. So 2 divided by 6 will be 1/3. While part 2, the disc is red and has the numbers of 3. So over here, those who is red only has a number of 4, which means this is 0. And for part 3, the disc is blue and has the numbers of 4. So over here, out of all 6 of them, there's only one disc with blue and a number of 4, which means your result should be 1/6. Part B is where they start to increase the level of difficulty of this question. 2 of the 6 discs are picked at random without replacement. So when you saw the keyword without replacement, means that the denominator will decrease while you are picking out the disc. The numerator, however, depends on what you have taken out. So over here, they are looking for both discs has numbers of 3. So out of all the numbers at the top, we only have 2 of them having numbers of 3. So 2/6 for this, for the first draw. Then after 1 was being taken out, both the numerator and denominator will be decreased by 1 because the keyword without replacement. So you will get 2/6 times 1/5, you will get your final answer as 1/15. And for part 2, both this has the same color. So the only combination that I can be getting from the top will be blue and blue plus yellow and yellow. So for blue disc there, I have a total of 3. So I took 3/6 times. After one blue disc was being taken out, I only have 2/5 left. So that's for the scenario where blue disc was selected. Move on to the next scenario. We have yellow disc. We have 2/6 times 1/5. Your result should be 1/5 plus 1/15. When you add them both up, it will 4/15 as your final answer. As for part C, we have blue, blue and yellow, yellow. But this time around with replacement. So normally this is what students come up with because they thought that only 2 and above will be taken into consideration. So I will proceed with a calculation here first. I get 3/6 times 3/6. While 2/6 times 2/6 to represent the yellow part. Okay, so if you stop at here, you fall for the trap set by the question because they specifically mentioned that this time around, after you draw, it will be replaced. So red will also be taken into the picture. So we can actually add with a 1/6 times 1/6 and you'll get your final results as 7/18. Moving on to question 7, okay, to identify the respective y's value, you're required to substitute 1 and 2 in the formula above, and you will get 2 and 4.5 to represent the value here. So I then move on and proceed with plotting the points. These are I roughly sketch this out. So there's something off on these 2 parts. Okay, let me redo it. Then my answer should be something like this. Okay, not much nicer. So with this graph that we have drawn, I can now proceed with the question that they are asking. By drawing a suitable line solve the following equation. So what they wanted was, if you look closely to the question, what we have there, the x squared plus 1/x, is actually our original equation. So they wanted us to replace that with y. So when y equals to -2, I draw a red line over there. the intersection will be the answer that they are looking for. So over here, it is somewhere before the negative 0.5. So I will label it as negative 0.45 for this. On the other hand, you will notice that we have a x squared plus 1 over x, that's our original equation, and there's excess value of plus x minus 1 over there. So you're required to get rid of it by shifting it to the back. So I will get my equation as y equals to 1 minus x. So with this, I came up with a table where I list the possible coordinates. Let's say today when my x is 0, my y will be 1, and when my y is 0, my x will be 1. So with this, I'm able to plot down these 2 points and proceed with drawing the lines here. So I use the red line to draw this out. The answer will be where the red line connecting with the black line there. Then the result should be somewhere around negative 1.85 to represent that. Okay, so moving on to part D. K is an integer where the equation has 3 solutions, and write down the possible value of K. So based on my graph here, okay, looking at the graph, they wanted 3 solutions and above. So I look for the curve that I drew earlier. Okay, the lowest point was located at when y equals to 2. So when I draw the line over there, the blue line, okay, that's the value where I have 2 exact solutions. Okay, question, they can ask you for 2 exact solutions, they can ask you for 3 exact solutions and more, or 1 exact solution. So in our case, if they're looking for 2, I will be putting my case value as 2. However, they're looking for 3 solutions and they mention the keyword integers. So based on my graph, okay, I'll be choosing 3 as my final answer because it is the closest integers which it has 3 exact solutions. So it can be 3, it can be 4, it can be 5, anything as long as it is more than 2. But it still differs based on the graph you have drawn. If your curve, which is your lowest point, is actually lower than 2, then your answer might start from 2. But based on my graph, my answer will be 3 and above. Moving on, we have a circle theorem question here where they ask us for V, W, X, Y, and Z. V here is actually 40 degrees. The reason being I'm using alternate segment theorem. Okay, so after identifying my V, I couldn't quite identify my W and X right away. So I proceed with my Y's calculation where I saw it as a cyclic quadrilateral because EABC will form the quadrilateral and the opposite angles add up will become 180. So y plus 80 equals to 180. My y will be 100 because of the cyclic quadrilateral rules. I then move on to identify my x because they are angled from the same segment where they have the same starting point of EDA as EBA. So it is 40 degrees for that. So with this 40 degree, I then check through the statement that was given by the question. They mentioned about EC equals to EB. So EC equals to EB will mix it to form a isosceles triangle where W will also be 80 degrees. So with this 80 degree information, we can now focus on Z where it is cyclic quadrilateral again, where Z plus W plus 40 will be equals to 180. So minus it off, you will get 60 as your final answer as your Z part. As for part B, I will first label the 2x down into KML and key assessment here is the keyword reflex angle. So if you don't understand reflex angle, it is actually angle that is more than 180, which indicates that they are referring to the KOL major sector. So that will be 11x, and we have to identify the minor sector of KOL now. So having KML and KOL here, I know that I can use the circle theorem, where angle from the center is actually twice the value of angle at the circumference. So I know it is 4x over there. 11x plus 4x will be equals to 360, and my x value will be 24. As for part C of this question, okay, first thing that I identified was that dxa equals to angle BXC. This is because vertically opposite. So you can use that to identify your angle. Then I move on with ADB and ACB. This will get me that angle ADB equals to angle ACB because they are angle from the same segment. And the last one will be the same part, but this time around is DAC equals to DBC. This is also angle from the same segment. So for part 2, they are using the mathematically similar calculation. So for easier calculation, I will always draw it out over here. So we have DAX, then I labeled the 10, comparing to CBX with the 8, 7, and 5 given by the question. So 10 over dx equals to 8 over 7. So when I shift it, I get 10 times 7 divided by 8. Your final result should be 8.75. Calculate angle BXC. This one here we'll be using cosine rule since all the sides has already been given. So personally, I don't actually memorize a cosine rule formula. I always use the original one and try to rearrange it. So if you memorize the formula, you don't have to write the same step as mine, and you can proceed with cosine BXC equals to 8 squared minus 5 squared minus 7 squared divided by 2 times 5 times 7. So for this, your cosine inverse results after keying into the calculator. So please remember to include your negative over there. Don't miss it out, else your answer will be wrong. Rounding it to 3 significant figures, you will get the results as 81.8. Moving on to question 9, calculate the surface area of this prism. Okay, so I first split up the trapezium, and there's 2 of them, where DCAB and HGEF. That's the 2 trapezium that was involved here. Then there's 2 rectangle where CGBF and DHAE. Okay, and then there's the top where HGDC and the bottom of EFAB. So I fill up the necessary information. Out of all these shapes here, I can only calculate the last 2, where it is the rectangle, HGDC and EFAB. They are 60 and 96 respectively. So to calculate the height of this trapezium here, I have to use the information of the CB, the 70 degree there, okay, and then I know that it is 1.5 because when I draw the D and C down, okay, 5 cm and 8 cm, the difference is 3. So 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. So having the 1.5 as my adjacent on the red color triangle that I drew on the top, okay, and we are looking for the opposite as the height of the trapezium. So this will involve tangent 70 equals to unknown over 1.5. So by taking tangent 70 multiplied with 1.5, you get the results as 4.12. That will be our height of this trapezium here. So I substitute it in. 5 plus 8 divided by 2 multiplied with 4.12. You should get the area of one trapezium. So you saw me multiply by 2 because there's 2 layers of it. Moving on, using the same triangle, I illustrate a blue one over here. We need to identify the hypotenuse now. So with adjacent and hypotenuse, so we're using cosine 70. Okay. Oh, I just noticed I written it wrongly. It should be cosine 70 instead of the 75 that I've written down. Okay, I written the wrong thing. So I do a correction here. So it should be 1.5 divided by cosine 70. So you get the results as 4.39. So 12 times 4.39 times 2. Okay, then you will get the 2 rectangles over there. So by adding everything up, it should be 314.92. If you were to round it to 3 significant figures, you will get it as 350. Part B show that EX is 6.5 centimeters. So XF is actually like what I mentioned, 8 minus 5 divided by 2, you should get 1.5 here. So with that, 8 minus 1.5, your results will be 6.5. And to calculate AX, okay, I draw this triangle here. I got my EX information as 6.5. I got my EA as 12. So using Pythagoras theorem, okay, correcting it to 3 significant figures, you should be getting 13.6 for this. So for part 3 here, I illustrated out the base. Okay, the G point located somewhere around here. Okay, so they're asking us for the diagonal AG with the base. So I need to use the X information because G connecting to X. So from there, so I have to use Pythagoras theorem to identify my GX value as 4.13. And for our AX value is the one that we identified at the previous part, which is 13.6. So tangent GAX equals to 4.13 divided by 13.6. Tangent inverse, you will get the results as 16.9 as your answer. Question 10, part A, pretty straightforward. Just substitute the 3 into functions f, x position. You get 3 squared plus 1 equals to 10. As for part 2, because it's a continuation from part 1, okay, from part 1, the f bracket 3 is actually 10. So I can substitute 10 to replace the function f with an x of 3. So this, by putting this 10 into gx function, x position, I will get 1 minus 2 bracket 10. And this will get us negative 19 as the final answer. As for part B here, is looking for G inverse. So there's 3 steps to this, okay, that you can memorize and apply. So first thing is always to change the function that they are looking for into y. So I've written down it as y equals to 1 minus 2x. Then the next step is to swap the x and y's position. I gotten it as x equals to 1 minus 2y. With that, you have to rearrange and find your new y here. So after the rearrangement, you should get your g's information as 1 minus x over 2. As for question C, pretty straightforward. All you need to do is to put 1 over x equals to 2. So your x information will be 1 over 2. As for part D, okay, slightly tricky. So when you saw 2 functions being arranged next to each other, it means they are being multiplied. So 1 minus 2x multiplied with 1 minus 2x. Okay, this is the first part. Then minuses with g bracket 1 minus 2x. So this 1 minus 2x at the back will be replaced into the x position of function g. After everything, remember to put the bracket because the relationship between the front's value and the back is minus. So after all this details calculation, I get my results as 4x squared minus 8x plus 2. Question E, however, is very straightforward. Okay, I have to replace the 1 over x as my new x in the function h. So I got 1 divided by 1 over x. After divide becomes multiply, I get my final answer as x for it. And when j is 5, means 5 to the power of 5 is 3125. For g, on the other hand, okay, this one is slightly tricky, and I always use logarithm to get this sorted out as efficiently as possible. So similar steps as previous, change function j into y first. So I got y equals to 5x. Swap the x and y's position, I get x equals to 5 to the power of y. Then to rearrange y as the subject, okay, I'll be using logarithm with a base of 5 and the results of x equals to y. So now our j's inverse will be log with a base of 5x. So when this equals to 2, I can key in 5 squared equals to x. X will actually be 25. H is actually pretty straightforward. Okay, jx is actually 5 to the power of x equals to h bracket 1 minus 2 bracket negative 12 brackets. So calculate that out, you will get h bracket 25 as a result. Substitute this into the x position. You will get 5x equals to 1 over 25. So the 25 is actually 5 squared, and to bring it up to the numerator, I have to add a negative to its power. So I got 5x equals to 5 to the power of negative 2. X is actually negative 2. So for question 11, sequence A, this is actually an arithmetic sequence where the differences is actually constant at negative 4. So 13 minus 4, you get 9. So for me to get to the fifth term, I'll be taking my 1 minus by 4, and then I get negative 3. So to get to the 0th term, I have to take 13 plus 4 and get my results as 17. With 0th term and other changes here, I can now construct my nth term results as negative 4n plus 17. As for part B, we have 0, 7, 26 and 63 here. Okay, so I use the geometric way, and I noticed that at the second difference, it is 12 and 18. So if they are both 12 and 18, they are not the same. So I couldn't use the geometric formula for this, which then I proceed to assume that it was a cubic. If it's a cubic sequence, means I have to find one more row of the differences, which is 6. Then I assume that the 18 plus 6, I will get to 24. So 24 plus 37, I get to 61. And 61 plus 63, I will get my fifth terms for sequence B as 124. With this being said, I can now try to use my formula here, where 6a equals to 6. So a equals to 1, 12a plus 12b equals to 12. Substitute our a into it, you will get your b as 0. Then 7a plus 3b plus c equals to 7. Substitute 1 and 0 into it, my c will be 0 as well. Then the last part, a, b, c, d, add up each other equals to 0. I will get my d as negative 1. So with this, I know that my result is n cubed minus 1 after substituting a, b, c, d's value into the equation that I've written there, an cubed plus bn squared plus cn plus d. So these are the things to take note here, and you can always run some calculation. Like let's say if you substitute 3 into it, you get 3 to the power of 3 minus 1, then you get 26. Always double check if you are using assumption in the question here. So I assume that it was cubic sequences, so I have to trace it and double check whether it's correct or not. As for part C, it's slightly special. Okay, for the numerator part, it's actually an arithmetic sequence where the differences is 1. So I know that the fifth term's results will be 11 for sure. And from the first term to zero term is actually 6 because 7 minus 1. So with this, we got 6 plus n as our numerator. As for denominator part, we have 8, 16, 32, and 64. So it doesn't seem like it was geometric or cubic or arithmetic. So I'll be putting them with the power type of sequences. So I put n 1, 2, 3, 4 to show you when n is the first term you get 8, second you get 16, third you get 32, 4 you get 64. So 8 here is actually 2 to the power of 3, then 16 is actually 2 to the power of 4, 32 is actually 2 to the power of 5, and 64 is actually 2 to the power of 6. So the last thing to do is to identify the relationship between the power and the n term. So with this, I can notice that the difference is constantly 2, which means I can set my n term as 2 to the power of n plus 2 for this. So when it's the fifth term, then I put 2 to the power of 5 plus 2, you get 2 to the power of 7, which is 128. That's how you get your part A sorted out with a 10 full marks. And for part B, one term in sequence is PQ. So the next term of it will be P plus 1 followed with Q times 2, because from 8 to 16 it is multiplied by 2, and then 16 to 32 is multiplied by 2. That's how you trace it instead of using our n term sequence there. It wouldn't help at all because you're identifying from P to the next following value. So P plus 1 will do for the numerator, and for the denominator you get Q times 2 as your final answer. So that's pretty much it for this set 42. It is actually quite weird because they didn't standardize that whether the new syllabus is coming out or not. For paper 41 and 43, actually all the new syllabus was coming out except for this. So very likely they didn't quite communicate with each other on what's coming out in the exam. And this exam format here is actually closer to those from the years 2016 to 2010. So it's actually an older format paper here. So it's very interesting, and can't wait to see more papers that's coming out from Cambridge. So if you like this format of the video, okay, feel free to share it to your friends that are struggling. So if you got any feedback on this new version of the video, feel free to leave it in the comment and let us know what you think about it and where to improve. If you got friends that are struggling, feel free to share this to them, and I wish you all the best in your upcoming examination. Bye bye.